Times here on WHYY in Philadelphia. I'm Marty Moss-Coane talking with Jack Bogle. He's the founder of the Vanguard Group, now the country's largest mutual fund. He's currently the president of the Vanguard Group's Bogle Financial Markets Research Center. And again, as I have said several times during this hour, he's written his 10th book called The Clash of the Cultures, Investment versus Speculation. Just a couple open lines at 1-888-477-9499. That's 1-888-477-WHYY. Jack Bogle, we got something on our Facebook page yesterday. We did a program about the horrible shootings in Newtown, Connecticut. And this listener wanted to know about ethical investing, saying as Vanguard is the largest single shareholder in Smith Wesson Holding Corporation, she goes on to say, being a parent of 2 elementary school children and a holder of several Vanguard accounts, one via my kids Thrive 29, makes my current investing decisions more complex. And I think it's ethical investing is always an important thing to think about.
It's a very important thing to think about, and I don't think any of us, including yours truly, do nearly a good enough job on it. But let me just say a word about Smith & Wesson and Vanguard's holdings and our Vanguard funds. And that is, we are probably the largest, almost certainly the largest single, because we're the largest mutual fund company. We're the largest holder. We probably own 5% of just about every corporation in America. The reason we do is because our strategy is one of indexing. Hold the market. If Smith & Wesson is in the market, Smith & Wesson, then we will be holding that. And so, should we speak up? The answer is yes. Should we get out of the stock? I think that's pretty debatable, because if your whole strategy is hold the whole market, you end up making a whole lot of judgments that are never quite as clear as one might hope. And so it's something we ought to be thinking about and maybe sometime doing something, but we couldn't have, for example, go to Smith & Wesson Management and say, get out of the gun business. That's their business. And the other thing that's very important to think about here is if we got out of that stock, the company wouldn't even know it. Somebody else would own it. And so you don't have the kind of clout that you would think that a 5% or so owner of the stock would have.
Because you would think you would have that kind of clout, at least to be able to sit at the table to talk about, in this case, I guess, reasonable gun control.
Yeah, and the problem with ethical investing, I think it's well summed up, Marty, by a letter I got some years ago when tobacco stocks were the issue. And, of course, they are in the index funds because they're in the index. And she said she was going to leave our fund called Windsor Fund and go to a social responsibility fund. So I got the ethical responsibility fund. So I got out their annual report and took a look at what they thought was ethical investing, and their largest holding was in Caesar's World, the gambling company. So, it's a judgmental thing. It's a little hard to say that there is no useful, we have defense contractors, for example, that are using the weapons. I don't know about the Smith case, but how much of them are using by the Department of Defense. So it's complicated, and one is horrified, in retrospect, looking at that participation, if you will, in arms, manufacturing of arms, sidearms, and yet doesn't quite engage in the struggle to figure out, is there a better way to think about all these things? So I confess to having some doubts. I'm sort of a doubting Thomas here.
Well, and I should say to our listeners, we were talking before going on the air, and you said two issues that got almost no discussion during the presidential race had to do with guns and had to do with climate change. And you seeing these as two important bookends that we need to deal with.
Well, yeah, I've said to friends and associates in my family, one of the horrifying things about today's financial system is in the recent campaign, we totally ignored the most important short-term, this is long before the events in Connecticut, the most important short-term problem facing America, which I believe is some kind of reasonable arms control, for the want of a better expression, and the most important long-term issue facing our nation, which is, of course, climate change. And they don't come up as political issues because they're too hot, no pun intended, in either case, too hot to handle.